Everyone needs a vacation every once in a while. Before you start booking your next flight to Disney World or Hawaii, let me tell you about a better vacation spot. And the best part? It's free for you to go there right now. The island in Fortnite is quickly becoming one of the most iconic locations in all of video game history. Fans eagerly await each new season of the beloved game so that they can see what happens to the map. Sometimes the changes are minor. Sometimes a friggin' meteor crashes into it. What fans might not know is that many of these locations are based off real-life places. There are also places in the real world that are being influenced by the game itself. So why don't we take a scenic tour of some of the greatest locations Fortnite has to offer? Here are 10 Fortnite locations in real life. Number 1. Izu, Japan. Let's start our journey with what inspired the whole Battle Royale craze in the first place. The Japanese novel turned movie franchise, Battle Royale, is the source material that got this whole thing started. In that novel, several teenagers are stranded on a deserted island. It's a beautiful location with sunny skies and amazing beaches. There are also several abandoned buildings spread throughout the island. These are full of cool items that are incredibly useful for the teens during their stay. There's really only one thing about the island that's not ideal. It's that all of the teenagers are forced to battle until only one is left alive. The island used for the film is also in Japan. It's an uninhabited island called Izu. The real place has a lot less cool items to pick up and bands of angry teens, but it's still pretty nice. Clearly, Fortnite had this basic location in mind when the developers designed the map. It's a seemingly deserted tropical island with lots of abandoned buildings. There isn't an oppressive military force, but the overall feel is pretty much the same. Number 2. The map is Poland. Izu may be the basis for the idea of the map, but not the shape of it. One can imagine that the developers of the game looked at all sorts of maps. It might surprise you to learn that the map is actually pretty identical to Poland. If you look at the maps side by side, it's pretty uncanny. Poland isn't exactly what you would think of first when trying to imagine a tropical island. For starters, it isn't an island. It's a normal country in Europe. Don't get me wrong, Poland is a beautiful place. It has some truly breathtaking cities. That being said, it doesn't really scream Fortnite. Though, who am I to complain? It seems to have worked out. Number 3. Nuclear test site aesthetic. There's something undeniably strange about the map in Fortnite. While it is technically set in a post-apocalyptic world, the location doesn't feel that way. There isn't much about it that seems like post-apocalyptic pop culture. Things like The Walking Dead, Fallout, and Mad Max all have a much more dreary feeling. We see our modern world slowly rotting away. Fortnite doesn't have much of this feeling though. Sure, there are abandoned buildings everywhere, but they aren't exactly depressing. In fact, there is something oddly familiar about them in a different way. You might not know this, but in the 1950s, the US government built fake little towns. They used these towns to test nuclear weapons. The government wanted to see exactly what would happen if these weapons were detonated in suburban America. In Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, Indy finds himself in one of those fake cities. Unfortunately, it's right when the government is testing one of the nukes. Luckily, Indy jumps inside a refrigerator and is saved from the blast. For some reason. The suburban zones in the video game don't really look like they've been abandoned. They kind of look like these fake nuclear test sites. There really isn't much of a lived-in feel to the houses and buildings there. It has more of that staged suburbia aesthetic. It's either based around nuclear test cities or Sudden Valley from Arrested Development. Though, considering the fact that Fortnite stole God Bluth's chicken dance, maybe Sudden Valley is more like it. Number 4. Center of Loot Lake in Portugal. One of the most visually stunning locales in Fortnite is Loot Lake. It's a beautiful lake that would be a perfect place for you to take your kids fishing. That is, if a bunch of crazy people weren't shooting at each other all the time. The coolest part of the lake is the trippy whirlpool that appears in the center. Many players have abandoned the game proper so that they could dive inside. Of course, this doesn't really give you anything, but it's a fun thing to try anyway. What's really interesting about the whirlpool is that it looks a lot like a real-world location. In Portugal, there's a place called Coveo dos Conchos. There's a beautiful waterfall in the center of a lake. It sort of gives the appearance of a mystical whirlpool. This was obviously the artistic inspiration for the Loot Lake whirlpool. Of course, there isn't a floating island anywhere in Portugal. Someone should really tell them to work on that. Number 5. Clock Tower is Big Ben. Tilted Towers is another really iconic location in Fortnite. The clock tower looks like a landmark that belongs to another really famous city. Big Ben is a major part of the London skyline. The famous clock tower was built in 1859. It's designed in the famous Gothic Revival style. The clock tower in Fortnite also has a very similar style to it. It's a shame that Tilted Towers didn't go for more of the London aesthetic. It would have been cool to see some of those nifty little black cabs that they have abandoned all over the streets. At the very least, they could have thrown in a TARDIS or two from Doctor Who. Number 6. Dusty Divot is Arizona Meteor Crater. One of the coolest things about Fortnite is how the map can change over time. Occasionally, crazy things will happen, like meteor strikes. The coolest area that embraces this idea is Dusty Divot. It used to be Dusty Depot. The area was a pretty boring section of the map at first. Just a few buildings, nothing all that special. In Season 4, meteors flew from the skies and obliterated it, and that's when Dusty Divot was born. Now it's a big meteor-shaped hole in the dirt. There was even a cool little facility in the center of it. It's almost reminiscent of the military base in E.T. What's really cool about the area is that it seems based on a real-life location. It looks a lot like the famous Arizona meteor crater. Of course, the real-world location is a landmark, not a place for a government excavation facility. Dusty Divot has also undergone an even more recent change. Now it is filling up with lava. Someone should warn the people in Arizona. Number 7. Wailing Woods is in Scotland. There's no denying the passion of Fortnite fans. They have taken this little battle royale game and turned it into a full-blown phenomenon. Some fans have a little more passion than others though. For example, one Fortnite detective on Reddit thinks that he may have cracked the case of what Wailing Woods is based on. It's one of the creepier locations that has appeared in Fortnite. The place is filled with eerie-looking trees and an overgrown maze. Our Reddit detective discovered an area in Scotland that looks a lot like Wailing Woods. It really does look like one of those random locations you'd find in a video game. Pleasant Park is Mount Pleasant Park. Some of the locations in Fortnite that are based in the real world are very subtle. If you didn't know about Coveo dos Conchos, you probably wouldn't have caught the inspiration. Though, if you didn't know what Big Ben was, clearly your public school education has failed you. There's one location in the game that doesn't even try to be subtle. Pleasant Park is one of the nicest little areas in the Fortnite world. It even has a soccer field where hypothetical Fortnite kids could go play. If there was ever a place on the map that you wanted to actually live in, it would be Pleasant Park. Well, I have some good news for you. There's actually a place called Mount Pleasant Park in Vancouver, Canada. It's a really peaceful little place and one of the greatest cities in Canada. So that makes it a bit better than the Fortnite version, which is utter chaos all the time. One of these is much more pleasant than the other. Number 9. The Mysterious Volcano. One of the coolest features in Fortnite Season 8 was the inclusion of the volcano. It's one of the more ominous locations on the map. There's definitely a kind of Mount Doom and Mordor vibe going on. The volcano also looks like it takes inspiration from a real-world location. It looks quite a bit like the Kilauea volcano in Hawaii. It may be an active volcano like the one in Fortnite, but so far no one's found any items inside. Though to be fair, they probably haven't looked that hard. Number 10. Fortnite in real life. We've covered a lot about the locations in Fortnite that are based on real-world places, but not the other way around. Fortnite is now starting to influence locations in the real world. Gamescom 2018 had a Fortnite theme park. The place was such an overwhelming success it wouldn't be surprising if a big-time theme park opened one day. Fans have also started creating their own real-life Fortnite games. They are hosting paintball games based on the famous game franchise. So if you really love Fortnite, get a bunch of friends together and go Battle Royale paintball style. Just don't try to parachute in. That sounds really dangerous. There's also a millionaire who wants to host a real-life Battle Royale tournament on a private island. The contestants would camp out overnight on the island and then hunt each other. I've seen those Fire Festival documentaries. I know that when rich people plan crazy island festivals, it always goes well. I look forward to the Netflix documentary about this idea. There you have it, Fortnite fans. All your favorite locations in real life. Did we miss any of your favorites? Let us know in the comments and don't forget to like and subscribe for more from The Binger.